Hi, this is Milani Douglas from the National Museum of Women in the Arts, and we are here today for our episode of the Curative Collective featuring Black Magic Sisters. We're going to talk to you about what they do and talk to you about reclamation and see how you can be a part of this upcoming exhibition. Rissa Cat, how are you today?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. I'm a big fan of the National Museum of Women in the Arts. We've done stuff together, so this
Yes.
feels good.
Yes, and it is always a pleasure to work with you. We go so far back, so I'm
We
glad that our
do.
lives keep intertwining and intertwining.
Ashe.
And yeah, and we just will continue to keep that going. I have been, of course, when we started this project, Reclamation, Remedies, Recipes, Rituals, I think I had probably, you were maybe, once it was official that it was going to happen, you were one of the first people I was like, I think it's going to go. I think it's going to happen. And wanted to find a way to talk about how
Yeah.
you're serving the community. So Black Magic Sisters is just one way. So let's focus on that. Tell us about
Right.
Black Magic Sisters and what you all do and what you all stand for.
So Black Magic Sisters is a it's we're turning it's building itself into sort of a ritual tool house. And it's my sister and I my actual sister, her name is Rissa Cat. No, that's me. I'm sorry. It's been a long day and hasn't
It's okay.
my my sister's name is Olutoyin, and together we came together because as an herbalist and as a root woman, I was finding that in terms of clearing space, in terms of giving people something that they could actually walk with, there wasn't anything that I'd seen or that I felt worked well enough to help people shift the energy around them. And so that's why we came up with these auric sprays. These are the things that we are really excited to push. There are other elements of the line that we're building, but these are the works that we started off with. So we have three of them. The Vibrate Higher, which is really, I mean, the Shield Up, which is meant to be sort of a personal protection spray. The Vibrate Higher, which is meant to be sort of an uplifting. We wanted to create something that didn't involve smoke, because oftentimes in a lot of ritual practices, you use smoke to clear, whether it's Palo Santo or whether it's white sage. We have divested ourselves of white sage in honor of the indigenous peoples and First Nation peoples who have said that that ritual tool is really for them. So we wanted to create something that people could use, and not everybody can manage smoke and incense. So that was the thinking. The crown chakra was the last of the mix in terms of this trio kit, and that's really designed to think through the that space above your crown chakra and how it can get congested. So like we have found that, interestingly enough, when we introduce the crown chakra, that one has become our bestseller. People really love it. It gives them clarity. It kind of moves the cobwebs out. It helps them make better decisions. And so it was we really wanted to make sure that folks had something that they could carry, that was easy, that travels well, that they could just spray. And if they needed to adjust the space, they could. If they needed to clean their jewelry, they could. If they wanted to wipe down their candles before they burned them, that they could. And if they just wanted to protect themselves, that they could. So it's something that has been a labor of love. We've been retooling and tooling for about 3 years. I've just announced that we're doing this. And part of it is because it's a huge undertaking to present this to the world, but also because my life is set up in such a way that there's a lot happening. And I wanted to make sure that we could roll it out properly. And so this year we actually launched the website, and I love that we get a chance to share some of this with you all in this platform, because that's what we feel we're doing, offering some sort of, just that we're adding to the curative toolkit. It's really important to us that people have access to things that will help them. And so we're dealing with essential oils primarily, and things like Florida water, that we think that are part of old traditions that we just kind of reframed for this.
And that's why I wanted to have you all featured, is because we are, of course, a lot of reclamation has been focused on the recipe portion of it, but it's also very important to look at the remedies and the rituals. And whether we know it or not, we all create rituals, and the things that we do every single day over and over again. These things become what some people call their practices. They call it their daily, their daily routines. But in
Right.
some way, shape, form, or fashion, it has some of the same framework of what a ritual is.
Hmm.
Something that you do over and over again to access a certain power and to progress a part of your psyche forward.
Right.
And so, what are some of the rituals or something that you do that maybe you can share with the audience and just describe and what that practice is?
Okay. So one of my biggest rituals is tea.
Yes.
I'm a snob, I will admit. I don't trust, certain bag teas that will shall remain nameless. And I'm a root woman. So my house looks like an apothecary. When you come to my house, I read your energy and I make a blend for you. And that's how we start the visit. Um, so tea making for me is really, really important and is something that I do pretty much every day in various ways. And, it's me gauging how I'm feeling that day. Depending on whether the conversation with my ancestors was a good one or a bad one, that might determine which herbs get put in. So like today's blend is I am a little stressed out just coming off production. I have lots of papers to grade, and I am dealing with some family stuff. So this is lemon balm, peppermint, and hibiscus and gotu kola. uh, Lemon balm is one of my favorite herbs because it's very soothing. It's got a very compassionate edge to it. I'm also a Cancer moon, and lemon balm is, herb associated with cancer, the sign, not the disease. And I find it can be very calming for me. The peppermint is cooling, and I know for me, I run really hot when I'm like, oh my God, I have all these things to do. So energetically, I find it to be helpful. It's also great for digestion. The gotu kola is an Ayurvedic herb, and I like it because it helps me think clearly. It's a really great mind-focused type of herb. And then hibiscus is something that I've been adding to everything. I'm not sure what what is drawing me to hibiscus as much as I think it's the color. It's red. It's got a root chakra feeling, so it helps ground me. It's also very high in vitamin C, so it's helpful in that way. But I like choosing the blends that I make. I like putting them in pretty glasses. I have little trays that I use. I have little accessories, and so the ritual for me is very much about intention and setting what the day is going to feel like and how I want to feel as I move about my day. So
That's
that,
beautiful.
yeah, that's a big one for me.
Yeah, I also have been working with hibiscus a lot,
Hmm.
and also lemon balm and lemongrass have been things that I've been going through. And thyme is my new favorite.
Nice.
Yeah, it's my new favorite addition to like my gingers and my turmeric. So that's
Mhm.
been a lot of fun.
It's a great respiratory herb. It really
It
is great
is.
for this season.
It is, and I'm glad that we time pretty much goes in and almost
Everything.
everything's great
Yeah.
right now, even if it's a little touch of it. I will hope that you can submit a recipe to our
Yes.
portal.
I would be honored.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's so let me tell you how it works a little bit. We are having 8 artists and then also myself as a curator artist showing like just our own kitchens and
Mhm.
looking at the kitchen as the gallery and
Mhm.
looking at the space that we prepare food as the material that we're
Mhm.
working with as the art. And we're
Oh, that's
also
beautiful.
including all the arts of bringing people together, of the art of communication between family. We know that most social movements, they happen around the table. They happen
Yeah.
because people are cutting a drink, they're having some tea, they're, having a meal together and breaking bread. And so when we talk about art and social change, sometimes we need to really look at the art that informs the art. So
Right.
you and the practice that you have of making your teas every day and making the sprays for the community that you serve, this is the art that informs the art. This is the art that keeps artists together, and we want
Yep.
to take it beyond the gallery. And the work that artists are submitting is very intimate, very personal, and I can't wait to show it on January 18th. We are accepting recipes from now all the way up to January the 3rd. At January 3rd it closes, and then we're going to go through the recipes, and then they will also be presented with links to our pantry, which has little tidbits about the food's history. And we've tried to make sure that we're not only looking at food from a Western lens, that we're looking
Right.
at food from a very expansive lens. So we're definitely excited about the project and would love to have you all have you submit a
I would love to.
recipe.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And when you submit a recipe, what we've been asking people to do is to add a food memory or a food story. So
Mhm.
that ties it to your family and your
Right,
traditions as well. So
right.
yeah, I think
That's
that's
such a,
beautiful.
so I have to say, that
Mhm.
is such a beautiful, like, I'm really excited about this exhibition because I do think, so as someone who claims the word witch as part of how I identify, um, one of the things that witches have always had to do is hide in plain sight. And the kitchen has often been where all the spell casting and the spell work happens. Because by day, a wooden spoon is just a wooden spoon, but by night, it's something else. And so when you're going into a witch kitchen, the idea is that everything that she needs or he needs is there, but to the untrained eye, it's just a kitchen.
Right.
So for me, kitchens are very magical places. My kitchen looks like an old school apothecary, that's bled into the living room. It's a mess, child. I was like thinking when you said photographing kitchens, I was like, oh, my kitchen is not photo ready, child.
I know.
But it feels like when I go in there, I know that I'm going in there to do some really good work. And when I have people come over, I've been hosting these porch sessions where, people come and sit on the porch and we do readings and, the whole nine. And there's always a tea service, and it's always a tea that is blended like right then and there. So part of what I love about what I get to do in terms of how I serve my community is give them instant compassion in a cup, because that's what I think tea is.
Well, I have to say that I have been honored to be a part of the porch session. I have sat on the front and had some tea served to me, lovely by Ritza Cat, and it was a beautiful blend. And was able to put some things in context, which
Mhm.
is, and these are sometimes, like you said, it has to happen in plain sight. And I
Right,
think a lot of women's work, or what is considered feminine work that's
right.
kind of leaning into the feminine energy, no matter who's doing it, regardless of gender. If it's work that leans into the feminine energy, we have been forced to hide it. We've been
Mhm,
forced to code it. We've been
mhm,
forced to call it a lot of things besides exactly what it is. And
right.
so this project, we're having a lot of imperfect kitchens, and we're
Mhm,
having, just the sometimes the mess of it and the
mhm,
stickiness of it. And then also when you have other people that are coming into that picture. And that's actually what makes it beautiful, because I think sometimes we're so used to seeing the final product,
right.
right? Especially in an art institution, we're so
Mhm,
used to seeing the final polished, perfectly framed, perfectly positioned, lighting the perfect way.
right,
And people say, well, why do I want to invest in an artist? Well, you may not understand that if you haven't considered the mess and all
right.
of the, the process and procedure that went into it. So we're really hoping that this exhibition shows some of that and
Well, if you want a
allows
messy
people to show
kitchen, I got you.
themselves.
Let me know. I got
She's
herbs
like, let me
everywhere. I got you.
It's so funny. We've been we're putting together kind of the reclamation kitchen, and
Right.
so when I was looking at my own kitchen as a place that we have to present it since we're home now, I was like, wow, it may not read as visually well, so we had to just do
Mhm,
a few little changes. But I
right.
understand. Listen, we want to see it exactly as it is, and
I
that has
love it.
been the beauty of the project.
I think it's such a great idea. That's congratulations on that. It's brilliant. It really
Thank
is.
you. Thank you. And I wanted to know, so we are going to put up your IG and then also your website.
Mhm.
Is there any other thing that you want to tell us about the work that you're doing, or anything as far as Black Magic Sisters? I know that you guys have your sprays. Do you
Yep.
offer readings? Do you offer, like, what are,
Yes.
okay.
So I am stepping into my gift, as it were.
Mhm.
And I have been hosting readings for folks. I do intuitive readings. They're not tarot, so I have cards that I use. Celsa's asking. I am based in Hyattsville, in Maryland, so I'm here. Um, and actually, this Saturday for Small Business Saturday, I'm part of an apothecary collective called Strobe. We will actually be at Pyramid Atlantic from 10 to 2 p.m. From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We'll be there selling and slinging our tea blends, and I will be doing mini readings. So if you wanted to get a mini reading, you just come hang out in the daylight outside in front of Pyramid Atlantic in Hyattsville. So the sprays were what we started with. Because I'm a tea person, I have created tea blends to be part of ritual. one of the things that we're working through is the packaging of things. So we created a kit called the After Times Toolkit that's on the website. That's a tea, a bath blend, and one of the sprays. And the thinking was, right now, everybody's sort of in this space of we don't know what's going to happen. And so the kit is just a really cool way to have a little bit of everything without committing to large orders of anything. And then I am working on a candle line that will launch in January. That's going to be
Oh,
called the Black.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's going to be called the Black Saints Collective, and it's based on 7 women. And so it's me taking how I interpret their energy and putting it into a essential oil blend that is, infused into a candle. Because I am Nigerian, first generation American, coconut is a big part of our culture. So we're using coconut wax, and so I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and because candle burning for me as part of ritual has always been a way for me to like focus and sort of find peace. It's something that I'm really excited about. So that will be coming in January. I'm learning to give myself grace with how we approach things. My sister is in training right now. She's part of a spiritual practice called Ifa, so she's in training, which is why she's not here today. But figuring out how we bring our ritual message to the world in a way that is respected and does not get sort of, trashed or sort of messed over, because we live in a very, we want it now, society where, I want this to happen now. And that's just that, ritual and intention and all of this stuff doesn't happen overnight. There has to be time given to it, and there has to be investment. So I know for me, I've been particularly shy about sharing, because then, once you expose your curatives to the world, then you have to deal with what the world, brings to you. And so the responsibility of serving a community in that way is that you have to have space and time to sit with people when they need to sit with you.
Right.
And so part of what I've been doing is the readings that I've been offering. I've set days, so Fridays and Saturdays. And if you go to, I guess the best place to do is to go to the IG page. We'll update it. So there's a link. So if you're interested in a reading, I'm happy to do it. I find that it's helpful for people to have a sense of where they are. And then I love that I can offer a reading and then say, here's a tea blend to kind of help with that message. Yeah. So that's part of how I've been working with clients, just saying, okay, this is what the reading says. We have this really great conversation. Here's some tea blend ideas that might be helpful for you to kind of facilitate the next step.
And how have you found, a question that I've been curious about as well is, how have you found that this time period that some of us are happily calling the Great Pause, and we have a whole
that's
lot
a nice
of
name.
other,
I like that.
Yeah, and also we have just this is things have slowed down a bit.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're seeing the challenges of the moment, and they're also seeing the opportunity of the moment. Has there been an opportunity and challenge that's been presented by the now that you would like to discuss related to your business, your practice, or your life?
So I'm not an administrative person by nature. Like, I'm a visionary. I'm 10,000 feet in the air. Like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. And somebody else really needs to be in charge of that other piece. When the pandemic hit, I had already gotten messages from my ancestors that something was coming. And the message had been, you need to rest. So initially, when we were in lockdown, there was all kinds of ridiculous ideas and notions around, oh, you need to learn a language. Oh, you need to grow a business. Oh, you need to do all these things. And my people were like, you need to rest, because what's coming, you need to be rested for. And then, I call it the after times, because it's just, I don't even know what life was like before at this point. That's how present this moment has been in my mind. And when George Floyd was murdered and the whole country erupted, there was this sense of, this is why we wanted you to rest.
Yeah.
Because your front line is not the physical front line of being at protests. Your front line is to make sure that people have someone to talk to, that they have herbs to work, help them work through their things, that they can take this spray with them when they, when they're traveling, and they're worried about being stopped by the cops. Like, Your job is to make sure that when the time comes and the need is there, that you all can make sure that people have what they need.
Mhm.
And so there's been this sense for me that there's a great opportunity to kind of have people think about the ways in which they can use energy and what we might call magic to kind of, protect themselves and their families and their loved ones, and that this plant medicine that is available to all of us,
Yeah.
in these very amazing forms, whether it's tinctures or loose herbs or roots, can be very sustaining in this time. Like, stress levels are through the roof. I'm drinking lemon balm just about every day. So the
Mhm.
wear and tear that stress does on the body, um, the weathering is a term that is actually used for what happens specifically, to Black women as a result of just the environments that we have to be in. It's called weathering. So we may look amazing on the outside, but on the inside, there is this actual fast-paced aging process that happens to our internal organs. So when
Mhm.
I think about my rituals with tea, part of the reason I'm doing this is not just because it's a very calming thing and because it's a way for me to be present in the moment when I set my day, but also because I want to stop the weathering, because I know that my outside stress influences are high. So the challenge has been, to be honest with you, staying present, and being willing to be vulnerable and open about the places where, I'm feeling like lost or bereft or where there are gaps. I've lost people as a result of this. I have family members that have caught COVID, and so what that means for me and how that translates is really important. That people know that yes, I'm spiritual. I wear bindis. I lock my hair, and there's always incense burning, but it doesn't mean that I'm above my human condition. And so that piece is there. There's a lot of opportunity to get people to listen because they've slowed down. There's a lot of opportunity for you to, think about your life and decide, is this what you want for your life? Do you really want to be, when we go back out of this, do you really want to be working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and not seeing your family and running from here to here? This pandemic has given us an opportunity to see that the way that we live is not a have to. It's actually
Right.
somebody decided this is what you have to do. And it's like, no, we can actually get work done and we don't have to be running around like chickens with our heads cut off. And at the same time, I'm a professor, so I am also managing like over 100 students across two schools. And, young people are stressed,
Yeah.
they're also quite stressed. And so the challenge has been finding the energy to give grace to everyone, including myself, because sometimes you just don't have any left. You're just tired.
Mhm.
Um, and so that piece it has been challenging. At the same time, I have to tell you, Milani, creatively speaking, I'm on fire.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
and there are days where I cannot contain how much I want to do and how much the virtual space allows you to do. If you can just focus and put the energy in it, you can create all of these amazing experiences for people who this works for them. Um, so I struggle. It's a daily struggle between all the different aspects of myself, and me trying to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do over here, and I'm getting that creative push this over here, and I'm taking care of my family. So yeah, it has not been easy, but I do think who I am once we come out of this is going to be better for the whole thing.
There's so many things that I love about what you brought up. There's several books in preparation for this exhibition that we've been reading, as you can probably imagine. I mean, the stack of books has been high, and some of them have been food related, and
Hmm.
some of them have been like I've been reading In the Wake on Blackness and Being by Christina Sharp.
Yeah, I've
And then
heard of
I've
this. I need to
also
get a
been,
copy. I
yeah,
heard it's amazing.
and then I've also been reading Joy James a lot. And
Hmm.
so, what you spoke of that the what happens in those spaces where we are able to bring ourselves together in the rest, right?
Hmm.
So, and I also been looking following the Nat Ministry. I love her
Yes.
work as well,
Yeah.
and she has been. I mean, she's been the Nat minister for a long time. She's been doing this work before people were,
Hmm.
even really actively talking about resting the way that she is. But I wanted to bring up Joy James because she talks about the captive maternal.
Hmm.
And I think that ties to the work that you're doing and also the work of this exhibition is that in the captive maternal is the ungendered phenomenon phenomenon, the ungendered phenomenon whose generative powers has been stolen by the state. So it's talking about that feminine, in my interpretation of it, that feminine energy and that work that is constantly being used to keep people together at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's used to hold people together in the midst of war. And then there was also this great quote where she did by Zainab Salbi, where she said, "We're missing the stories of women who are keeping life going in the midst of war." And so the art of that, I see the magic that happens in the kitchen is a part of that story. It's a part of like the liberation of the captive maternal. And so I see this time period as a time for rest where there's actually room to do that work, because it's slow work. It is not, like you said, it's not instantaneous. The work of being a roots woman or healing our community, it is slow. It is research. It's talking to people. It's oral traditions. It's finding the remedies, recipes, and rituals. And that takes time. So I have seen in this time period of the great pause, as some people are calling it, that there's actually some room for some people. We still have a lot of work to make this equitable, because we know that some people that are on the front lines are not able to have that same experience. But there's a little bit more room to actually do more of that feminine work that leads to the liberation of what can rightfully be called the captive and oppressed maternal.
I mean, there's something to be said for the slow walk. And as someone who is not a slow walker, who spends a lot of time running around, you know, bouncing here to there, being forced to be slowed down was definitely hard to manage. But I definitely know that the time that I've been spending on my porch has been life-giving. You know, the walk, the 2-mile walks that I've been taking have been, you know, really self-sustaining. And so the fact that there isn't anybody looking for me because we're in the middle of a pandemic, or this, you know, because sometimes what you're running around for is that you are responding to the outside expectations that people may have of you and what they think they can do with your time. So literally me making a decision someday, you know, I woke up one day and I was like, you know, I don't have it today. And so I canceled all my classes. And I was like, you guys rest. I'm a rest. You should go rest, you know? And being able in this time to make those kinds of decisions, to make those kinds of calls, like I'm always I tend to be I've learned to become a preemptive rester. So when I look at my schedule, I'm like, yeah, you're gonna need a break right about here. So I build my syllabus around the idea of at least 2 preemptive rest days that are just built in, even if I don't need them, so that just in case something pops off, I have that space. But now, like, there's no one looking for you because we're in the middle of a pandemic, you know? So it's okay if you take a minute to explore this thing that you left on the table that you didn't look at 4 years ago. It's absolutely okay if you go to sleep, you know? Because what I realized in this space and time is that I know that I don't sleep enough, but I didn't realize how poorly I slept until I got a weighted blanket, which I never would have bought had I not heard about, you know, how it helps with just anxiety and things of that nature. I got a weighted blanket and I was like, oh my God, this is what people like. This is what some people experience on a regular basis. This is amazing. But it has changed. Like the few days that I used it and I actually got sleep, it was like regenerative. I immediately felt like I'd done a 180.
Right.
So I do think that this is a great opportunity to recalibrate. I do think I think if you come out of this the same person, you just did it wrong.
Yeah.
You just did it wrong. I'm, you know, sounds judgy. I don't care. You did it wrong. Like, you know.
You either did it wrong or it's going to show up maybe 3 years down the road and it's like, surprise, here are all those changes.
Yeah. But it's important. Like, we really should not go back to whatever that norm was. I'm not interested in that, you know. And the further we get away from
that it, you know, perhaps it wasn't even normal.
No, I agree with you.
I have a hard time defining something that doesn't work for the norm as normal, you know. And I think that this has also led to a great conversation that says maybe that wasn't normal. Maybe that wasn't what we should get used to. And I do think that we still are going to have to prepare ourselves and rest up to be able to balance the force that is going to come once things are quote unquote back to some semblance
Right.
of it. And to if there really needs to be any kind of like changes that go into that. But I you know, you and I have known each other for so long, and I feel like many of the conversations that we get to have now
Mm-hmm.
were conversations,
We've been
you know,
having
10, 15 years, 20 years ago, even, that
They
we
caught
were
up, child.
huh? Pardon?
They finally caught up.
They finally but and it was like we were having them in such small circles, and even kind of broaching the topic to institutions or more public
Right.
spaces. If we didn't design the programming, I mean you did the red tent, was that 2008, 2010?
Yeah, something around there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a while
You know,
ago.
and so, but it was a space you created. So it is an honor and a pleasure to be in at the National Museum of Women in the Arts, or in conversation in larger platforms where we're talking about these things openly, and even using language like witch and root woman and things like that we did in smaller circles, just to be able to spread it to be able to spread that language and the energy of it faster and reach more people has been a wonderful and powerful part of the kind of work that we're able to do.
I mean, when we think about, so this word witch has been coming up a lot, and I'm on Club. Are you familiar with Clubhouse?
No.
So it's this new app that's right now it's invite only. They claim to be beta testing it. It's been up since April. And it's basically like Twitter, except instead of you typing, you just run your mouth, you just talk. So you get into these rooms and you have these real conversations. And I'm part of a new Nigerians group that a friend started, and I was invited to be part of a conversation, and I think she outed me. People like to out me, which is hilarious.
Right.
And
tell them what you mean by outed.
So I claim that word witch, but I know particularly in my culture, that word is very loaded. And it's loaded. It's loaded anyway. You know, we see it in the term witch hunt and things of that nature. And I'm a huge fan of history in the sense of how women show up in history. And so Maurice Condé has a book called I, Tituba, the Black Witch of Salem, which is like one of my favorite books to read. Like I read it like once or twice a year just because I like reading it. And Tituba was actually a Black woman. She was an enslaved woman during the Salem witch trials who got caught up in the mess. And so she, you know, Maurice Condé basically channels what she feels is her energy to write this story about her, because she appears in the trial documents, but only as Tituba. We don't have a last name. We don't know where she's from. It's like, you know, with the Bible, you get a name and that's it, and you go on from it. So she decided to create this story around Tituba, so we understand. The book is I, Tituba, the Black Witch of Salem.
And I'm posting it in the comments as well.
So it is basically it's like historical fiction because she did exist, but the story that this writer creates around her is something that she is you do. Rachel, you're gonna love this book, child. It's really good. So when we follow Tituba's story, her perspective is very different. And what often are referred to as witches are women who know their own minds and they know themselves. And so they're the women that people are threatened by because they don't subscribe to the nonsense of society. They don't fit in. They usually live away from society because they know y'all are crazy and I'm not interested. And there's this push and pull where you despise this woman, but you go to her because you know she has this otherworldly knowledge that you need to help you. So people will talk smack, but then, you know, in the middle of the night, go see this woman about whatever. And so when we are thinking through that word, I'm often like, when you say that, what you're really saying is this woman makes me feel uncomfortable because she knows her mind. And so, yes, Barbados. Shout out to Barbados. And so I claim that word in honor of the women who know their own mind. Because every time you look at that, the way that word is used, it's usually a woman who, you know, has some sort of herbal or occult magic knowledge. She often is really smart. She doesn't look for approval from anyone, and that pisses everybody off. Or she's really like, yo, I'm gonna rock this, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna do this. and everyone just thinks she should be quiet. So it's the loud ones, it's the brash ones, it's the ones who are smart, it's the ones who are quiet, it's the ones who don't want to be bothered. But these are always women that know themselves, and or at the very least know themselves enough to be like, I don't want to mess with you, and they become vilified. And so that word has been weaponized as a way to get rid of women that are troublesome, that make things difficult, that question, they're the fly in the ointment, because they're like, this doesn't look right. And so for me, that it's always been a political choice to use that word. But I understand culturally, in my culture, it's like the worst thing to call somebody. I found out recently that a family member secretly referred to me as one. And he's like, that one, she's a witch. And my cousin came to complain. She's like, I can't believe she said that about you. It was terrible. And she was going off and she was looking at me, and I was like, well, at least she knows what she's dealing with. I was like, you're saying it like it's a bad thing. And she was completely shocked. But in this group, when I said it, because I understand the cultural ramifications, people lost their minds. Like, well, wait a minute. What does that mean? How do you mean it doesn't have to mean what you think it means? What do you mean I can be this and it doesn't mean I'm an evil person? Like, it was a really powerful space that it was a powerful shift. And so I do think that while I'm not necessarily going around, screaming it from the rafters, I think it's funny how I have people who they will out me because they want to claim the word, but they're not ready. So they're like, well, she's a witch. Okay. And so it doesn't bother me. I'm fine with it. But I'm also very much aware that that word is loaded. And I'm really clear that when I claim that word, I'm claiming it from a space of a woman who knows her mind, a woman who understands who she is and what her purpose and her soul contract is. And so you can be uncomfortable with it, but that's really not my problem. And so in changing the language, I think we open things up a bit. And we let a lot of women in particular who are constantly being shooed and poo-pooed and told to be quiet, we let them breathe a little. And to me, that's really for me, that's a big part of what Black Magic Sisters is all about. Even the way we spell magic with the K is on purpose. Right. Like that is not done, it's not done to be tongue in cheek. There's actually a reason why we're using the K. We're using an old world spelling, and we're also invoking a specific way that we're thinking about magic as energetic shift, and not like Black girl magic, which is more, which has its space, but it's not really what we're talking about. So yeah, I just said all that.
And I think, listen, we're here to say all the things. When have we ever spoken and not?
You're right. I'm on fire, child. It's Sagittarius season, so I'm hyped right now.
Listen, it is all right. It is all right, because this is important, and this goes back to why this exhibition is set up the way that it is, and that it is a process. Like, we are having the launch of the exhibition was November 15th, but as far as when we actually go live and show people's work, it's going to be January 18th. It's important for us to be community and inclusive. We want to find ways for the public to be a part of it. Right. We want to make sure that when we're talking about the making of art and what is fine art, that we are speaking about it from a space that all of us can have some relationship to, and right. that usually a lot of us have at least some relationship to food and recipes, remedies and healing, rituals and routines. And so it's important for us to be able to make space for that kind of conversation in that kind of room. And then also to acknowledge that a lot of the issues that we have with inequity for women and inequity for women of color have to do with the fact that we allow this language to demonize women and to suppress that generative power that Joy James so eloquently spoke about. And so we have to make sure that we are empowering the words and empowering the practices that take time and make space for that kind of work to happen, and that we uplift organizations and companies that are doing that work, like Black Magic Sisters. So as people are looking at this, please make sure that you do two things: is that you look at reclamation.nemwa.org, submit your recipe, submit your memory. I know that, from some of the feedback, there was some conversation about, what if I don't want to submit a remedy? Let me tell you something. My daddy, my recipe, my daddy has a barbecue sauce. I promise you it won't be on that website. You're not going to get that recipe.
Don't do that.
Jim Dean in this situation. But what we will do, we're not going to, but what you can do is you can submit a memory You can submit, and when you talk about your memory, include like the ingredients. Like we have one woman who has submitted pictures with hers and talking about grandma's pancakes. It's been beautiful. One of our artist Jossie, she submitted the map of Brazil where her family's from, and she submitted an audio of her, speaking in Portuguese and the picture as well, telling the family story of these remedies that her mom used to make when she was sick. So when we say we want you to be a part of this exhibition, we're serious. We want you to be a part of the exhibition and submit your recipe, remedy, or memory. The other thing that we want you to do is look up Black Magic Women, find Ritzakat, find these organizations that are a part of the Curative Collective. And because we're uplifting organizations and people that are doing work and businesses that are creating things that are the investment you put in them is the investment you put in yourself, and that are tied to and aligned to a lot of what we're talking about in the framework of this exhibition. So it is an honor and pleasure. I am so happy that this conversation has gone all the places that it has gone.
So many things, so many things.
So many things, so many things. So I am, very pleased. And I'll also put in the comments some of the things that we mentioned. Sarah mentioned that she always calls myself a good witch. Listen, we need to claim all of the language that has been used to put women out and put feminine energy out, because there's something I always look at. What are people trying to rid society of to find out where the real magic is? If you look at the spaces that people are trying to oppress the most, I promise you, in those people, in those spaces, there's some magic and there's some art that we need to maybe revisit. And also look in your own family's history. No matter what your ethnic identity, what your racial identity is, ask yourself, what in my family history had to be suppressed for me to identify as I identify today? Because before you were any of it, before we were white, Black, Asian, before we were today's topics, we were a whole lot of other cultures and names that are rich with their own traditions that you may not even have to look further than your own family's history to find something that uplifts you, so we don't find ourselves in a space where we're exhausting sage and things like that in our communities, because we're looking into our own traditions as well. But like I said, Sarah says we all have magic. Yes, we do. And I'm hoping that this project will be a part of how we reclaim and reconsider our language around it. Ritzakat, it has been a pleasure.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And we will put some links in the comments. And if you want to find this footage later, come back to the National Museum of Women in the Arts Facebook page and also our YouTube page. And you'll see all the wonderful things that we're saying here. We extend our hearts and love to everyone in the audience. Be safe. And if you want to find another way to connect, because you may not be immediately right there with your family, find a way to share some recipes, remedies, and rituals. And then if you are feeling so fancy, share it with us as well. Thank you, Ritzakat, and we will talk again soon.
Absolutely. You're absolutely welcome. Take care.
Take care. Bye.